it would be the ability to be resilient and still choose the right action, even in the face of emotions that you don't like. So, like if, there's a lot of things in life that'll happen where something goes wrong, you get bad news or whatever, and it is still something that you need to do to choose the right next action, to just take another step forward and do the right thing.
What's up, good people? Welcome to season 3 of the Dear Young Athlete podcast, where we talk to coaches and athletes about their journeys and what advice they would have for a younger version of themselves. I'm your host, Jacob Thompson. I am a speaker, author, recording artist, content creator, rare disease advocate, and an aspiring Paralympian. If you want to hear my story, check out season 1, episode 1. But enough about me. Let's meet our guest. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. The man I get to speak to today, he is a husband. He is a father. He's a former collegiate baseball player and a current collegiate associate head coach. He's been a conference champion as a player and a coach, which I'm excited to hear more about. He is a scholar. He coached at Creighton University. He's all around awesome guy. I happen to know him, his wife, one of his kids a little bit. So I've been really excited for this conversation. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Weidner. And I forgot to add, above all that, he's a man of God. So that being said, Paul, how we doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. So excited to be on the podcast, and I've been thinking about it for a while, and I'm really excited to dive in and get going. This is great. It's great, really good to be here.
Yeah, well, let's jump in. You played and you've coached on conference champion teams at the collegiate level, but where did it all begin for you? How'd you fall in love with playing sports?
Oh man. It's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I grew up in a very small town in Minnesota, Randolph, Minnesota. I went to Randolph High School, which was a small high school. I graduated with about 50 kids. And so sports in general, not just baseball, it was very easy to play all sports and continue to play sports all the way through high school. I was nowhere near good enough to play 3 sports at a school that would have been any bigger than Randolph for sure. But Randolph allowed me the opportunity to do that. And so played basketball and football as well as baseball, and loved it, loved every minute of it. So that was really, really good. So fell in love with all sports at a really young age. Really the social side of it is, it's always been probably one of my biggest avenues for relationships and impacting people has been through sports. And I can remember that being a main part of it for as long as I can remember. My best friends played sports. That's why I played sports. And then that's why I fell in love with it. So it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, that's why sports are such a beautiful thing, right? Well, they allow for relationships and forming who you are, and they can do so much in your life, which you know all about and will hear all about. So, did baseball stand out as kind of your best sport? Like when it comes to your choosing college, picking a sport, kind of bring us into a little bit of your world.
Yeah, baseball was always my favorite sports. I think, kind of cynically, I would say. So I was a very small kid, so very undersized, and the things that you're able to do as an undersized athlete on a baseball field don't hurt you quite as much as they do on a football field or a basketball court. And so that I'm sure that was part of it, but it was my favorite sport for as long as I can remember. It's what I wanted to do. And so even though I played all three, it was definitely a little bit more committed to one. Um, really was pretty driven to play college baseball, and playing college sports in any other sport was not going to be something that I even wanted to try. It was pretty much all about baseball for as long as I can remember.
Well, I'm about 5'9", and my wife is about 5'4". If she hears this, I think that's right. But I'm like, if our kids have a shot, it's probably baseball, or
Yep.
it's something like badminton, or you know, probably
Yeah.
not football and basketball, but we'll see. You never know.
Yeah. You know what's
So
funny is I ran 1 year of cross country in high school. So I took 1 year of football off, literally because I thought I was way too small and I was gonna die if I played football. So I ran 1 year of cross country, and as far as like natural ability goes, or like what maybe I just kind of picked up on more naturally than any other sport, was that I was very good at that. I just didn't want to do that as a sport. It's not to in my opinions, I have a little bit harder time with that like kind of team concept of I'm the only one kind of running the race. I know you have teammates. I'm not trying to say that you don't, but baseball and a baseball dugout and a football sideline and a basketball locker room, those are
yeah,
places for me that I really love. But the sport, that maybe if it was just about the sport and how good I could have been at it or whatever, maybe it would have been running. I might have been a cross country
yeah,
runner. That might have been my thing.
funny, funny.
Yeah.
Well, so how do you end up at Bethel University?
So I toured Bethel for the first time, I believe, the summer going into my junior year is when I toured it, and it wasn't baseball related. There was no baseball recruiting happening for me at that time. And so it was just touring the school and getting to see a bunch of schools in Minnesota. And loved the campus, loved the people. There was a very early connection, just a feel that I got being on campus, that this is where I want to be. And it never really wavered. And the fact that then baseball got to be a part of that, got to talk to the coach, which was a different coach at the time than there is now. So the coach that recruited me was not the one I actually ended up playing for.
Hmm.
But the fact that we got connected there, just kind of further solidified to me that that's the place that I want to be. And really, there was only one other school that I even considered. And then during my senior year, early on in my senior year, I just committed to play for Bethel. And the Division III commitment doesn't entail anything overly official other than just getting enrolled and whatever. But I had made up my mind at that point that that was my decision, um, and so that's not a very elaborate story by any means, but the only thing I would say is that I don't have specific reasons why, but this feeling, like how do you explain this feeling that you get when you get on campus and when you talk to
Hmm.
the people? Like how do you explain that feeling? And it's certainly, I could see my faith journey playing out and all those different type of things, and it just was where I was meant to be, and it seems like there was no way I was going to end up anywhere else. So that's really how I ended up there.
Wow. Yeah, I think when thinking of, you know, high schoolers trying to pick a college, like you could think about major, you could think about sports, location, but it's interesting you point out something you can't really quantify, like how do you feel being at this place? Because, yeah, at the end of the day, that probably means more than all the on paper stuff. So
Absolutely.
bring us into you get to Bethel, you're playing baseball, you come from this small school, like what is your experience like right away, whether it be with just being at college or playing baseball? Are you, how are you lining up talent wise? What's that like mentally? Bring us into that.
Yeah. So my transition, as far as kind of life transition goes from high school to college, that went great. I didn't really have any issues whatsoever. Now living on my own, or whatever you would call college, living on your own. I know you're in a dorm with a bunch of people, but getting away and going off to college was very easy for me. The school part was easy as well, just kind of prioritizing my time. I was always pretty good at that. The baseball side of it was much more in doubt as far as like how my talent level stacked up with the people around me. I there was, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, maybe a little bit later on in the podcast. I didn't really know at that point what I was if I was not a baseball player. And that's a really big problem when you're struggling as a baseball player or not sure if you're even going to make the team or whatever. Um, and to further compound that the new coach's first year was also my freshman year. So that wasn't the person that recruited me. I didn't really know what he was going to do as far as, okay, is he gonna cut a bunch of guys? Is it gonna be a pretty quick hook on some guys, like if they don't seem like they're matching up? And so I remember going to practice every day in the fall, really feeling like this has to be good today, or I don't know if I'm going to be asked to come back tomorrow. Hindsight, that's not how he would have run it, but I didn't know. I just didn't know. And I definitely was on I wasn't the bottom talent wise by any means, but I was towards the bottom of that freshman class from a talent level perspective, if we're being honest. I did some things well that certainly kept me around, but that was a stressful thing as far as the transition from high school baseball, where, like I said, very small high school, and when you graduate with 50 kids, like I was playing varsity baseball as a sophomore, hitting right in the middle of the order, and was kind of somebody that was helping carry a pretty successful high school team in that level, at that setting. Again, small school, which means you're playing other small schools and whatever, but you go from being kind of the guy in that sport to now being like, I really hope that I make it to the spring, and then what am I going to do? Am I going to be asked back for the next year? That different type of stuff. So that was a much different transition for me in trying to figure all that out. And it was a good thing for me to go through. And I look back at it now and I laugh, because I probably didn't have quite as much to worry about as I thought I did at the time, but it was very real at the time, for sure. It was very real.
So, what positions were you playing in high school? And then what happened when you got to Bethel? Did you have to change and adapt?
I did, yeah. So I was a middle infielder in high school. And yeah, just not when I went to college, I wasn't going to cut it in the middle infield. The quickness of hands, footwork, all that different type of stuff that was certainly good enough to play where I was at in high school was no longer good enough to play in college. And so I went the entire fall being an infielder. And then kind of a funny story. And I know how this works now, because you're evaluating guys that either come in at semester or what your team looks like going into the second semester. I know this from a coach's perspective now. Um, get done with the fall, and I wasn't told then that I was going to move to the outfield, but I was told in the days leading up to spring practice starting that I was going to be asked to move to the outfield. But I had spent all winter long kind of almost obsessively working harder at becoming a better infielder, because I
Mm.
thought that's what I was going to have to do. Um, and it worked out fine. I went to the outfield, and that was a better fit for me anyways. Arm strength wasn't great, which is obviously not a great thing to have as an outfielder, but a lot of the other things that go into being an outfielder, I did much better than being an infielder. So, and then I spent the rest of my career as an outfielder.
Yeah. So, at what point did you kind of crack the lineup? And then I have a follow-up question based on that.
Yeah, so this is an important thing that so when I'm working with our guys right now at Bethel, we don't obviously spend a lot of times talking about ourselves, but when it's the right time to do it, we bring up, I'll bring up like guys that are role players and trying to find their way on the team. I try to have them understand how much I get the position that they're in, because I believe I started in the lineup total games in my career. Like I was in the starting nine in the order of
Yeah.
3 games in
Yeah.
my college career. I think it was three. Um, and had other pinch hit opportunities and all that different type of stuff. But we're talking about 4 years of a college career, and I started 3 games. Um, and that's to some people they would be like, "Wow, that's like, how did you do that?" And I laugh at that now because those were the best 4 years of my life, from like athletic career wise, for best 4 years of my life, even though I was playing less than I did in high school. That was so incredibly fulfilling to be a part of a team that was rising up and from a culture perspective was able to finally win a conference championship, program's first conference championship when I was a senior in college. And um, and so I don't view that in any sort of negative or bitter way. And I really embraced my role, what it was. And I did have a legitimate on field role as far as being like a pinch hit option off the bench, which certainly helped. It wasn't a nothing, but a lot of guys would look at it and go like, man, was that worth it? Of course, yeah, of course that was worth it. That was awesome. And I loved every minute of it. And so that's an important thing that I try to, when it's appropriate, because we don't want to talk about ourselves as coaches, but when it's appropriate, I try to kind of impart that on the players if it can help them.
Yeah, so there are kind of two questions in my mind based on that. And the first is how did you go from, being the guy at your school to now writing majority being a role player, not being in the starting lineup? Like, what was that experience like for you at the time? Because it's a lot easier to look back, right, and be like, that was awesome. But how do you feel? How did you feel during that? Hey, 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 if you are enjoying this podcast, I need you to do two things. One, go on whatever platform that you're on and follow the podcast. Rate us and review us. This will help the algorithm and help this podcast reach more people. So thank you. Then I want you to head to 1020words.com/DYA. TEN20words.com/DYA. Check out our merchandise. We got hoodies, crew necks, sweatshorts, t-shirts, anything that you would want. Get some super comfy, stylish apparel and use code all caps DYA20 and take 20% off. Follow us on social media, Instagram at Dear Young Athlete, or on TikTok and Instagram. My account is at 1020words. If you're interested in being on the podcast or bringing Dear Young Athlete to your school, team, or group, simply head to the website and click the button that says Bring DYA to your team, school, or group, and send me an email, and I will look forward to connecting with you. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I think that transition my freshman year and trying to figure out, again, hindsight, I probably was never actually in danger of not making the team, but that was a very real worry for me at that time. I think the fact that I had that happen, where I was going through that as a freshman, made everything else after that truly feel like I get to go be a part of Bethel baseball today. That is a blessing and nothing else. If I was to go in and not have had that concern about making the team or whatever, then maybe, who knows, maybe I would have gotten a little bit more um, greedy, or I don't know, greedy is maybe the wrong word, but a little bit more like, well, what's in it for me? Like, why am I not playing? Why am I not? And trust me, I'm a competitor. I wanted to play. Don't mistake that for a second. In fact, people that are on a team and don't want to play, I don't want you on my team if you
Right.
don't want to play, right? But it just always felt like a huge blessing to be able to be a part of a program that was doing what we were doing and accomplishing what we were accomplishing. And, you know, everything when I tell the story about it, everything, of course, is viewed from the lens of like somebody on the outside looking in as if it's just me that's doing this. Like part of being a part of a team is that there's like deep social connections and deep relationships that happen that you form from being a part of that team. And if you don't have those, then of course you start to look even more about like, okay, if I'm going to play baseball, what is in it for me? Like if I'm not playing, is that really this or that? I I was going to play no matter what because my best closest friends were on the baseball team.
Hmm.
And that's a huge part of it. Not to make it sound like, church league softball or like intramurals, because it's not. It was highly competitive, and it was very intense at times, as it should be, and that's fun and good. But to me, playing baseball at Bethel was about a lot more to me than how much I was going to play.
Hmm. That kind of answers my question because my next question, because I imagine, being the 10th man at one of the top D3 schools in the
Mhm.
conference. Yeah, why not maybe transfer to, no offense to anyone, but transfer to Northwestern and
Yeah.
start, you know, but I feel like you answered that unless you want to say more.
No, it's good. I think the only way I would have considered doing that would have been had I actually gotten like cut from the team,
Yeah.
because at baseball to me still, as much as I loved being at Bethel, I still definitely had a lot of identity wrapped up in being a baseball player
Hmm.
that I probably wouldn't have been able to overcome super easily at that point in my life. To the point where I probably would have said, I need to go find somewhere where I can play, or be on the team. And at least then, of course, what am I saying? It's like, so that you can be able to say you're a baseball player, right? Which is such a funny thing that, um, is not mentally healthy to try to
Hmm.
do that. But I think that's where I was at that point in my life as a freshman. As far as how much I was actually going to play, um, I never considered transferring anywhere else to see if I could play more. Because honestly, as a competitor too, I knew that we were going to be good from the time I was a sophomore on, and we were fine as a freshman too. But once I could start to see my class of athletes start to take over the culture of the team, in a bigger and bigger capacity, I knew we were going to be good. And why would you not want to be a part of that?
Hmm.
Because you go somewhere else and maybe I'm playing left field. Like I have no desire to play left field for a 5-35 baseball team. Like I just
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
have, I certainly wouldn't have as much fun. Like no offense to that, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had as much fun, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I feel like in the last several years, there have been a few things that have kind of been changing the landscape of college sports, especially and maybe it's more prevalent at the high level D1 schools, but you may still see it with your players. And what I'm thinking of NIL,
Mhm.
I'm thinking of transfer portal, and I'm thinking of social media. And these are sort of all intertwined, but especially social media nowadays, when I interact with especially some high schoolers, it's all about, if you can post that you got an offer, or you can post you with this jersey. It's just so much is done for social media and then evaluated by social media. And like, oh, you didn't go D1, you must be trash. It's like this crazy thing that people are believing just because it's all on their phones all day is, oh, look at this guy, look at that guy. And then just maybe at the higher levels, it's like, oh, where can I get the best NIL or where can I start? I'm just gonna transfer and transfer. You got guys that played for five schools, right? And so it's like, what do you say with your story being so counter to that? Like it wasn't real sexy to be a role player. It's like there wasn't a lot of attention or clout that you had, but you had this awesome formational experience and now you're a coach. Like, what do you say to young guys who are growing up in a different landscape of sports?
Yeah, I think well, a lot of guys, even the ones that are capable of playing at the Division 1 level, because a lot of players are, I do think if they were to come watch us play or watch us practice or watch some of the caliber of talent that's on not just our team at Bethel, but a lot of Division 3 rosters, I think they'd be very surprised at what they see. Um, and then after that, because it can be the right fit for uh, a number or a very big range of talent to go play at different places, it should then turn into what is the right fit for you as a program, as a school, all those different types of things. And unfortunately, to your point, it has gotten farther and farther away from that and farther towards, or closer and closer towards, what looks the best to the outside world that I'm going there. And we definitely recognize and value when a player seems like they don't need that type of clout and attention, um, because I think it says a lot about their self-awareness and their maturity and things like that if they're able to understand that not just Bethel but another school that's not a Division 1 school might be the best actual fit for them, even though that Instagram post isn't going to look as good as if they're going to X Division 1 school. Which doesn't make Division 1 schools bad by any means. It's just how many players end up in the wrong places because they wanted that 15 minutes of feels really good on Instagram instead of like going to the right place. We don't have to deal a lot with the NIL conversation quite yet. I think it's going to be something that will probably trickle its way in soon, and it already has a little bit, but it's getting there. But just it hasn't impacted us a ton yet. The transfer portal has, and we're going to continue to lean into that and make sure that we understand how to use that to our advantage and not feel like it's a bad thing. Because kids ending up in the right place, even if they go to the wrong place at first, is always great. And we feel so strongly about our team culture and the way that we do things and the program that we have that we're gonna count on more guys wanting to come in than wanting to leave. And that's played out over the last few years. We don't have a lot of players that want to leave our program, because they come here and they're like, these people are amazing. The baseball is very high level. The atmosphere on game day is very, very good. All these things that they thought was reserved for Division 1 baseball, they get at our school. And not only that, but they don't have to feel like they're owned by baseball. They get to have other interests and things in their life that we view as healthy, not unhealthy. It's funny when I was elsewhere, an athlete that would want to come in and say, I want to be, I want to go through a degree that was, I don't want to use a specific example, but a very demanding degree, like school degree. We would never tell them no, but it was kind of like, ooh, that's going to be tough to do that and play baseball. Or like, yeah, I want to have this job or be involved with this activity. It's like, well, not if you play baseball, you can't. That was for where I've been elsewhere. At Bethel and other Division III schools, we embrace that and we want athletes to have other interests. It will never make it so that you are not committed to playing baseball, because if you're not committed to playing baseball, you won't play for, you won't play for us. There's too many good players on our team and other Division III rosters that don't we don't need to worry about that part. But the fact that you would have other things going on in your life, which is a very mentally healthy thing, is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Mm,
And that's where I think we come in and can really be the right fit for a lot of kids.
yeah, that's a good word. And I think just the example you have of like being part of a program, staying committed, um, being formed by it is still extracting a great experience out of that, not having it be the coolest, sexiest thing. Um, is just a really good example, I think, for your players, especially who are coming up more than we did with social media and feeling pressure to appear a certain way instead of just putting the team first and embracing your role, embracing who you are. And yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to ask, so how do you how do you get into coaching, and tell us a little bit about kind of your coaching journey, but then
Mhm.
also about your heart as a coach, what it means for you to be a coach, and why do you coach?
Yeah. So the first thing I ever coached was one of the assistant coaches at Bethel when I was a player. My freshman year was running a club baseball organization and needed an assistant coach for a weekend. And so I went with that team and was an assistant coach. And it was just very fulfilling. And I I tell it like this, almost like it's a this great story, but it really was pretty much this straightforward. I went into Bethel as a psychology major because I thought I might want to be a psychologist or like maybe a therapist or something like that. When I coached baseball for the first time, or did some coaching for the first time, I was pretty sure pretty early on that actually that's what I would like to do. And that doesn't mean that always needs to be like full time what I'm doing to make all of all of my income or whatever. But I don't ever want to have a moment in my life where I am not connected to a team in which I'm a coach of that team. And so that was a very straightforward thing there. And then I just continued to coach for that organization for uh, all throughout college. And then as far as college coaching goes, I was fortunate enough to be asked to be on staff right after I graduated. So I went right from being a player to being a coach of the players, a lot of players that I was teammates with the year before. And that was a good experience, a challenging experience, but a really good experience. And then did that for 3 years at Bethel as just one of the assistant coaches, and then was really into it and really wanted to do it. Um, and so then I was given the opportunity to go be an assistant coach in the Cape Cod Baseball League, which is on the East Coast, and did that for a summer and was looking to have that kind of parlay its way into another coaching opportunity. And it did. The right fielder on the team that I was coaching out there was the right fielder at Creighton University. And so him and I had a good relationship over the course of the summer, just a good coach player relationship. And he let me know about an opening on Creighton's staff and said, put in a good word for me. I'm very thankful for him to this day that he would do that. And he's He's been great. He's now I believe he's in AAA for the Toronto Blue Jays, I think, um, because he's just a really, really good player. But we had a
Mm.
great relationship, and he helped me out a lot to get that job. And Coach Brian Robbie, the coach at Bethel, also helped me get that job, and some other people had some really good recommendations as well. Um, and then so went right from that summer to in the fall, moving kind of in a whirlwind transition down to Omaha, Nebraska, to be an assistant coach at Creighton for 3 years. One of those years was COVID, so really it was like 2 years, but a 3 year span. Um, I met my wife. She's kind of like throwing more things in this. I met my wife at Bethel, and we got married right after college. And so I'm married through all of this, and we end up having our first child at when we were down in Omaha, which was a huge blessing. Um, and then it just became more, obviously your life turns into like that's a huge thing now. And so then we moved back to Minnesota to be closer to family, and I was able to accept a position back at Bethel again to continue college coaching, and I've been there ever since. So since fall of 2021, I've been at Bethel as well.
So I feel like this is so important to hear because you're on this conference championship team. Obviously, bunch of stud players. Why why do you think you were asked or invited to be a coach upon graduating?
Yeah. Well, I had made it known to the head coach, Brian Robbie, that I would like to coach. So that was certainly part of it. But I also think too, knowing kind of the position we're in now, we don't accept everybody that asks if they want to be a coach, right? It's got to be the right fit. And I am very proud of the fact that I was starting to take on that role or some of those characteristics as a leader on the team, even though I was just a role player on the field. And so credibility, understanding of the game, leadership ability, all that different type of stuff um, was happening to a good degree, in my opinion. And I'm proud of that. As a player, that was already happening. And so the transition into being a coach was made a lot easier by the fact that I think I was somebody that people hopefully already felt like they could look to, whether I was wearing a uniform or a BP top as a coach. They were looking to me already for some of that stuff. And so, to your point, that did make it. I'm proud of that, and I'm glad it worked out that way too. It was great.
Yeah, I feel like that is just so crucial to hear and understand because not everyone wants to be a coach. So that's fine. People that don't coach, it's not a knock on them. But the point is in 5 years, no one cares if you were starting shortstop and batted third.
Yeah,
Just your life moves on. And so sure. I mean, that obviously is important and fun, and that's why we play, right? You wanna get in there, you wanna be successful. But that it comes and goes like this. But the character that you develop and exhibit day in and day out in 5 years, that's what matters. And that's what matters for when your coach recommends you for a job, whether it's a coaching job or an office job or whatever. That's what matters when you get married and when you have a kid. It's what kind of person you are. And the cool part about that is like you don't have to be a great player to be a great person. Um, and hopefully we don't want people to be a great player and not be a great person because then who cares? After you're done, you're done. And then what do you have going for you? And I think like it's just so cool, right? You're a freshman not knowing if you're gonna make the team, right? And then now you get to coach college baseball and the other team that you coach, and it's not because you were some All-American, right? Yeah, would it have been fun to be All-American? Of course. But what matters so much more is who you are. And the second part of my initial question is what is really your why behind being a coach and what does that role mean to you?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is a pretty stock answer, and it's something that I think a lot of people would say the same thing. But the reason why I think a lot of people say that this is why is because it's probably true. Because if you do coaching for a long time, it has to be about more than just what the game, like what the sport is meaning to you. The people in particular that you get to work with, the coaches I get to coach with, the players that I get to coach, um, that is the reason why I coach, hands down. Um, in theory, I could be a lacrosse coach if I wanted. I just don't know anything about lacrosse. But if the people in the lacrosse program were great, then I would enjoy coaching. You know what I mean? So it's baseball because I love baseball and I know baseball. But the people that are within it are everything to me. Um, and it also makes it so specifically coaching where I coach has meant something to me. I did leave for 3 years, and that was also a very fulfilling experience. And the people there were also great. So it's not all about being at Bethel. There are other places that you can find this level of fulfillment. But I knew right what I was stepping back into when I came back, and it was very easy for me to say I wanted that because Bethel's a very special place to me. The players, even though there had been a complete turnover of players since the time I had left to when I came back, I just knew what they were going to be like, right? They're going to be in a very special time in their lives. They're going to be very special people. Not all of them are cut from the same cloth or are perfect or anything like that by any means, but that's part of the beauty of it too. I don't want to coach all perfect people, right? I want to impact people in a way that makes it so they really leave there better than when they showed up. And there's a lot of truth. You know, when we do recruiting, we talk about this statement, and there's so much truth to it. You will be showing up on campus as a kid, and you will be leaving the program as a man that's ready to take on the world. Now, nothing can prepare you for real world experience probably like real world experience can. So there's a lot more life to be lived after Bethel, but you will be showing up a kid, and you will be leaving a man that's ready to do that. Um, and that doesn't just happen on its own. That's people sharpening other people. And I like to think that us as coaches and myself as a coach buys into that. I want to sharpen other people to the point where they're ready for the rest of their lives to be great husbands, to be great dads, to be great coworkers, leaders, great coaches if they want to coach. That's very important to me. And the reason why at the end of every season there are tears shed is not because baseball is done. It's because the people that you're sharing the baseball experience with is done. They can play town ball for the rest of their lives if they want to, right? Um, but it's about the people you're sharing that experience with, and that's why it's always hard when it's over. And I like to bring that up at the end of every year and remind people of that is that you are sad right now, not because of baseball. You are sad because you don't get to show up tomorrow and be with your brothers that you've created over the course of this season.
Mm. I like that iron sharpening iron. Proverbs 27:17. And that being said, I think is a good transition to hear a little more about your faith journey and what that's looked like in your life what have been some of the big moments and how your faith is impacting you and lived out now.
Yep. So just starting all the way from the beginning. So my home growing up was definitely one that it was Christian. It was we talk about God, we talk about Jesus. Definitely not to the depth, and maybe that's just normal because of like age and stuff. But it was just the very skeleton framework of Christianity was there in my home um, growing up, which I'm thankful that it was to that extent, only because I think me choosing a school like Bethel um, may not have been possible had I not had at least some understanding of like, yes, I am comfortable being around Christian people. Um, but getting to Bethel and what that has done for my faith journey has taken it from a small level to a much bigger place. And so that's really the turning point for me of my faith journey. And um, it's funny because you don't like it's a journey for a reason, which means so I'm 31 years old. You ask me this question again when I'm 60, and I'm going to have 29 more years of this happened, then this happened, then this happened. That's going to continue to have me growing in my own faith journey. But up till this point, you know, choosing to go to Bethel and having that Christian community force me to grow in my faith has been a huge thing because it wasn't a huge part of my life going into Bethel, and it became a huge part of my life while I was at Bethel. Um, Certainly things like so I got married, so I met my wife at Bethel, got married. When you get married, that's a whole nother layer of, God has placed this person in your life and what does that mean for your faith journey? And that's been a huge blessing. And then having kids, and that's another thing. And those are all turning points of life in general, but you can't have, if you're a Christian person, you can't really have turning points of life without having turning points that you can connect those turning points rather to the faith journey as well. Having kids is a big part of the faith journey because now you have another responsibility in trying to raise kids in a Christian home. And all of those things have just led me up to where I am now, which is an ever tested but ever growing faith on a daily basis, but one that is very strong currently.
You and I both know Bethel is a Christian school, right? But
Mhm.
everyone comes to Bethel with a different background, different experience. I think it's very relatable, probably to a lot of guys on the team to say, hey, we grew up hearing about Jesus here and there, but we just love baseball and
Yep.
Bethel is good and we want to play. And you talked about showing up at Bethel and having your identity so wrapped up in baseball. How do you feel that has shifted, or like where did God work in that area of life?
So truthfully, I think that I'm much more aware of those types of issues like in my own life as far as like identity and where am I placing my identity and this and that. Um, but to be honest, that's far from a finished product even of itself. Like I have a hard time in my life currently, and hopefully not forever, but currently have a really hard time in my life with detaching myself from something I spend so much time and effort on not being who I am. I know those aren't supposed to be connected, but I have a hard time with that. And so baseball was something that I put so much time and effort into as a young athlete, which meant it's who I am. It's not what I do, it's who I am. That's not right. That shouldn't be that way. And I still to this day, maybe not to the extent that it used to be, because bringing awareness to it and working on it certainly helps. But I'm I I still to this day, whether it's my job or, you know, how our season's going for us as a coach, like at Bethel, because we put a lot of time and effort into that. How is that not pulling at my identity still to this day? And I know firmly where my identity lies, and that's as a person of faith. But in the moment, in those moments of like, oh, high stress, it is hard to detach still to this day. So I struggle with that, but obviously something that I continue to work on. And I know the fact that, you know, there's prayer there, and there's a God is always going to be with me on that, and that makes it a heck of a lot easier to go through that, and always understand that I can lean on Him and lean on my family, and you know, my wife and kids are always a huge part of this equation as well. So how has it shifted? It has shifted, but you know, there is no such thing as a finished product really in anything that we try to work on in life, and that's not a finished product with me either,
Yeah.
ironically.
Yeah, we're all a work in progress in our own ways. And I feel like it can be such like a Christian cliche thing to be like, oh, my identity is in Christ. It's not in baseball, or it's not in fill in the blank. And I think as I've grown, I've realized like my identity certainly is the foundation is in Christ, but being an athlete is part of my identity. You know, being a father is part of being a husband. Like these are all parts of my identity, and they are things that give great value in my life. But the trick is, right, not building your foundation upon something that could be swept up from under you, and then not knowing who you are, or not knowing that you have value. And that's the big thing to me is like, hey, yeah, playing baseball, like when you work really hard and then you see that hard work pay off and you have a great game or a great year, like that's a great thing, you know? And you should feel a sense of pride and value in that, but to know like, hey, you're you're so much more than that even. Yeah, that's great, but you're more than your biggest achievement and your biggest failure, right? And yeah, I remember this summer playing baseball. I was 13 and I kept my stats. So every night after a game, I'd go home and tally up. You know, I was 2 for 3, whatever. And I was so attached to that, and I was so defined by that. And I was on a really good team, and I was having a good year. And I had like a 25 game hit streak going. And we played this team. We lost. I was 0 for 2, and I got one more at bat to keep my hit streak going. Just was totally selfish. We had lost the game already. And I think I like struck out or grounded out. And I remember I went home and I like tore up my stat sheet. Um, and I tell that story just because like that's how deeply I was attached and defined by performance, right? But it's
Yep.
knowing who you are foundationally just brings so much more freedom to perform and try your best. And hey, if I don't do it, if I go 0 for 3, I'm no less of a person.
Yep.
I feel like that's the aiming point, Like, do any of us do it perfect? Probably not. But
Right.
if we're aiming in the right direction, um, there is so much about sports that we see translate into life, right? So many lessons. We could talk all day about that, but do you have one kind of favorite lesson that you feel like you've learned in sports? You've seen it impact your life, and what would that be, and how have you seen it in life?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I think the the sports mirrors life thing is there's a lot of truth to that, absolutely. And there's a lot of things that like to when you try to unpack what the best answer to that would be in the same way, kind of the same stuff I was talking about before. Like I believe that the biggest thing that sports has taught me is the value of working hard, but also like resiliency in that. But then also, I can think of examples in the last, however many months, years of my life where I still wish I was a lot more resilient than what I was. And so I don't know what I would be without sports. I'm sure I would be less resilient, but I know the value of resiliency. And I know that sports teaches you that. And so if I had to pinpoint one, it would be the ability to be resilient and still choose the right action, even in the face of emotions that you don't like. So, like if there's a lot of things in life that'll happen where it something goes wrong, you get bad news or whatever, and it is still something that you need to do to choose the right next action, to just take another step forward and do the right thing. And that's no that in sports that the version of that is like, okay, so you strike out, the thing that you're feeling inside is to sit and pout or throw things or slam things or whatever, but the right action is to do the complete opposite of that. You lean into your teammates, you engage in the next pitch, and those are conscious actions that are choices that are hard, but it's resiliency, right? And that mirrors itself in life a lot. And so I'm just thankful for sports because I don't know how resilient I would be without it. Um, Certainly knowing that I wish I was even better at that than what I am, though. So that would be the best answer I could give.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Well, we we end every episode the same way. You're on the Dear Young Athlete podcast, and if you could say one thing to your players, to the younger Paul, in the statement, Dear Young Athlete blank, what would that be?
Um, and I don't mean to keep repeating this, but I think it's the best answer that I can give is that, dear young athlete, you are significantly more important than being a baseball player. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't be a baseball player, but you are significantly more important than that. And even within your role on the team, you are significantly more important than that. So I wouldn't have advised myself to quit playing baseball. I wouldn't have advised myself to work any less hard. I think all of those things were the right things to do still. Um, but I would really like to have been able to get to myself in those moments and say, no matter what happens here, like you have life that's bigger than that. And I know you're not able to see that and understand that right now. And some of that just comes with perspective and life experience, but that's really the best answer. And it's the answer that I would give to players too. And actually, when I say would give, I currently give to players a lot. I mean, I just, when I have players fill out questionnaires or things like that, one of the questions on there is kind of a 1 to 5 scale of like, uh, to me, baseball is dot, dot, dot. And then a one is who I am. And a five is what I do. And I'm always curious to see how players answer that. If they're a four or a five, that's the healthy thing to do. Like baseball is just what I do. It's not who I am. If they give a one or a two, there's probably some things to unpack there. And in that relationship with sport and what it means to you, it's not about making it so you care any less. In fact, you'll perform better if you free yourself up from this, like, this is who I am. Because think about how much anxiety you're going to feel in the batter's box or on the pitcher's mound when you feel like if I strike out or if I walk a guy, that's a personal attack on who I am as a person. Man, there's a lot more stress on that statement than I might walk a guy on a Tuesday playing Augsburg. Like those are not the same level of pressure, right? And not that Tuesday game against Augsburg doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person if you do something wrong on a baseball field. And we try to impart that a lot on guys. And but I needed that and probably still need that advice to this day, but I certainly needed it back then.
That's beautiful. I could add to it, but I think you hit the nail on the head. So with that, Paul, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. I believe this is going to be impactful for people who hear it. It's going to give a great perspective, great lessons. Do you have any final words for the people?
No, just thank you for having me on and giving a platform. It's been nice. It's just been nice because these questions are very intentional and really get at the heart of any message that I'd want to send anyways. Like when we coach, we talk about what's the right approach with two strikes, or what's the right, what are we doing here on defense? What's the right bunt coverages and all that stuff. And all that stuff's obviously very important to know and understand. But when you get at the heart of what message any coach, including myself, would want to send if you gave them a microphone and said, here, talk about it, it's these things right here that we talked about today. And the platform and the ability to talk about it is something that I don't take for granted. I'm very thankful that I was able to do that and that you were able to ask me these questions today. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, that's it. Peace. And there you have it. One more episode in the books of the Dear Young Athlete podcast. Thank you for listening. Again, check out our website, our social media, rate and review us. Make sure you're following because we have some great episodes coming up that you won't want to miss. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.